Bam.
Hi, this is Todd Hester, and you are watching to the Break It Down Show.
Yeah, we'll see if I get to talk it all on my show. Todd tends to talk. Hey
What
man,
I'm
thanks
here
for coming on
for.
the show. This is a real treat. I dig it when people start their own thing, and this is one of the great things about our country. Doesn't matter where, it drives my girlfriend crazy when people are standing out in front of the grocery store and they're like, "Would you sign my petition?" And I'm like, "Sure." And they're like, "Do you want to know what it's about?" Like, no, I just love the fact that you're doing something that you have the right to do, and so I will back you up. Because whether it's me or the next person, let's just do our civic thing. So yeah, we have a president, and yeah, we have a governor, and we have all these people, but we all have these individual powers, and so it doesn't just come down to you have to vote. Voting is the least thing you can do. You can go and do any number of things that are tremendously valuable, and usually more valuable than simply working at the end of the decision making process. So I salute you for
Well, thank you.
for taking the time to set something up to try to make a difference in the place that you live.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Well, and philosophically, I'm in agreement with you that, we're at a place in our country where everybody wants to change Washington, D.C., right? Everybody's kind of obsessed with Uncle Sam and the federal government and all. I'm like, run for dog catcher, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
start in your backyard, make your
Yeah.
little neighborhood better. um, Folks that get online and do these little neighborhood Facebook groups that they get a bad rap, but they're working in the neighborhood.
Yeah. 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 Work in your neighborhood and maybe even get a little good at that first. So you could say, hey, we tried my neighborhood, and then maybe get a little bigger instead of starting all the way at the tippity top, you know?
Yeah, that's right. And amongst other things, you and I have several mutual friends that are always talking about things like candidate selection for running for office and so on and so forth. And you see more and more of these folks that they jump in, and the first thing that they've ever run for is U.S. House of Representatives.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, hey, again, run for dog catcher, run for school board, run for city council. Be a precinct captain for a while. You know, till your garden, and then you can worry about somebody else's garden.
I'm not the person that made this up, but there's the several hallmarks of a great statesman, and one of the main ones is can you build consensus?
Mhm.
And again, if you and your neighbors can agree that you have good ideas or you are a shepherder of good ideas, then again, this is a good thing. So, hey, when Todd gets behind something, tends to have a good nose for things, I'll follow. And that's a good thing to have that, even if it's locally, regionally, whatever it is. How does someone develop that good nose?
Wow, that's a great question. I think probably one variable in that calculus is trial and error, just good old-fashioned experience. I think another
Mhm.
variable in that calculus is trying to be well and widely read. And then probably a third variable in that calculus is surrounding yourself with people who have shown that they have a good nose for it, and sort of sitting at their feet, learning from them, and letting them help you cultivate that scent in your nostrils that says, hey, this might be worth pursuing.
I'll put a link to your org right down below for
I
everybody
love
who
it.
wants to, yeah,
I
who wants
love
to
it.
check out the Yorktown
Go check
uh,
us out.
Foundation. Yeah, go check it out.
Sign up for our newsletter. Like everybody, we have a newsletter, but unlike everybody, our newsletter is actually awesome. So go sign up for it.
Go sign up for it. We got Aaron Hook on the hook talking to us today too. Hey, thanks, Aaron. Aaron always checks in, and I don't often say hey to him, so I wanted to make sure I took a chance to say hey to him. This is a lot of work. These things start with one person with more hats than they have heads. And so I know that you're busy doing this. I appreciate you taking the time. You do have to have the marketing hat on at some point in time. So that's one of the hats you're wearing today. But how many hats do you have on? And what are some of the hats that you put on? Like, I didn't realize I was going to be the janitor today.
Yeah, again, great question. It's a good point because you do wear all of the hats. So I wear the marketing hat, I wear the policy hat, I wear the research hat. Those are not inherently the same thing, policy and research. I wear the sort of networking, building consensus, building coalition hat. I wear the fundraising hat, and I wear the um, executive secretary hat. And so it's probably that latter one. Of course, when you start your own organization, you know that you're going to spend some time doing a lot of the grunt work, a lot of the paperwork. I will say that I was not prepared for how much of that there is when you start your own public policy organization. Yorktown Foundation for Public Policy is almost exactly 2 years old, and I spent one full year of that doing almost nothing but fighting with the IRS, fighting with the Commonwealth of Virginia, just getting incorporated, getting my tax exempt status, all of that paperwork, of which there are mountains,
Yeah.
was far, far more resource demanding than I anticipated. Because I didn't do this the smart way, Pete. I didn't ask a bunch of different people, hey, what am I getting myself into here? I was pretty much ready, fire, aim when I started Yorktown. And so
Right.
once I jumped into it, I found out the hard way. Oh wow, this is I wanted to write bills and get in front of fundraisers, and I burned the first year just doing paperwork.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other things that you'll find, and I'm positive you found it already, is everybody's ready to tell you like everybody's ready to assign you more work. What you need to do, and you're like, I'm going to swear you don't have to, motherfucker. Quit giving me more work to do. Give me some money.
Right. And look, there is no shortage of people with great ideas out there, right?
Yeah.
And they want you to take their great idea and put all the work behind it. And so, one of the questions that I very regularly ask myself when someone says, "Hey, I think you ought to be doing X, Y, or Z," is I just
Yeah.
go back to my fundamental mission. Is this aligned with my mission? If it's
Yeah.
aligned with my mission, then I'll have that conversation. If it's not
Yeah.
aligned with my mission, I'll say, either thank you for your interest, but that's not what we do. I'd like to introduce
Right.
you to somebody who does do that, or
Yeah.
contrive some sort of diplomatic, nice way to say that's batshit crazy.
Yeah. The thing too is there is a capacity problem, right? Because you only have one head and you can put 15 hats stacked up, but at some point you can't spend your whole time trying to balance all of these because not all the hats are the same shape. And when I try to explain to my friends, from like who are trying to help me get my podcast going forward, I'm like, when you acknowledge that I'm working hard, do you imagine that my plate is full? Like, yes. And I'm like, where do you think I'm going to put that task? And they go,
Yeah.
huh, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, so here's what you do. And you don't have to, but if you got 10 extra bucks, just dump it in the bucket every month. And my plate, it gets a little bigger. And I can put some stuff on my plate because you've helped me get a bigger plate. Like legitimately, that will go a long way. So I don't need to make up more things to do. I can think of more things for me to do than you can, I promise. But what I
Right.
don't have is a bigger plate. And really those kind of things, and you're super folksy, so I know you know how to do this, but that ability to explain to someone like this is if you see what I'm doing and you want to see more of it, then yeah, $10 a month, $20 a month. If you can do more, great. Believe me, I'm going to ask you for more money. So just this $10, don't think that's all I'm going to ask you for. But if you're telling me what to do, I'm going to tell you how to get me to do more things. And that's by kicking in some cash. Because ultimately, all of these things survive on how much money we give. And then I'm going to add one more thing, and then I'm really going to shut up. The more I can get money from you, my friend, or you, my neighbor, the less I have to go to the big corporation or, God forbid, somewhere that's foreign to our immediate area. Forget the country and going to foreign interest to get money. But the more we can keep this here, the more it will belong to us and represent us.
Yeah. Great point. One of the things that I hear getting in front of people, because this is a conversation, as you can imagine, that I have pretty frequently,
Yeah.
is somebody say, well, how can I help you? And I'll say, well, I need this amount of money, and it breaks down into this amount for this goal, this amount for this staff person, so on and so forth, so you know what you're underwriting. And then invariably they'll say, why don't you ask Koch brothers for that? you know?
Yeah.
Well, for every one of me asking the Koch brothers for money, there's
Yeah.
another 200 people in line ahead of me.
Right. And by the way,
And
that's 3 people on staff to go manage that mission.
that's right. That's right. They have a limited award staff that they're writing these grants with, right? They're
Yeah.
dealing with hundreds of fairly substantive grant proposals that they've got to go through.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, would you rather me derive my resources from a groundswell of grassroots people who believe in the mission, or would you rather me just be part of a larger collective?
Right.
And so that's one piece of the puzzle. And then another piece of the puzzle is simply getting people involved in the mission. You know, we talk about, we don't want donors, we want friends, we want partners, we want people who
Yeah.
will not just write a check, but will introduce us to a few people. Maybe they're willing to sit on our board of directors. Maybe they're willing to give us some feedback on how they think we're doing, whatever that looks like, whatever their skill set is. You know, we want people who say, yes, we believe in what Yorktown is doing and we want to lock arms with you. And, you know, the larger, picking on the Koch brothers, don't take that the wrong way, Koch brothers. I would love to get in front of you and talk about money. But
Yeah.
a lot of those organizations aren't going to be, they're not going to be dialed in on that personal level like your individual donors are.
Yeah. The and again, that is a different job, right? That's let me put that hat on, the
Hmm.
fundraiser hat, the grant writer hat, and that's competitive. Not only are you in
Yeah.
a ocean, you have to swim faster than 95% of the people that are out there, and they're good at swimming. So you got to be competitive with the person who's going to be your grant writer. You get to have someone who's ball hawking the grants before they come out, so you can actually get in the water first and not cheat but compete, and all of these other things. That's several other people. If I could just get the first money I talked about for the first person, um, we could get in and do the things that we already do well, right? And whether it's the Koch brothers or George Soros or Caterpillar, you know, whoever it's going to be, my preference is to keep this thing funded in house. Do you think we can do that? Can we work here? And how do we grab 100 great citizens from this part of the world, our part of the world, to make an improvement here? Can we invest locally? And if the answer is no, that's fine. Let me just go to the next person, because somebody has to do all of this work, right? And if you can't kickstart local, well, then why is national going to look at me? You know?
Yeah, and you know, in addition to that, Yorktown is 2 years old. So not only am I competing with lots of other organizations, I'm
Yeah.
competing with lots of other organizations that have a track record.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I have to sell someone on a vision. And to
Yeah.
be quite frank, I've got to sell them on the idea that I can execute that vision against
Yeah.
people who have said, hey, you know, we've been doing this for 10 years, 12 years,
Right.
20 years.
Yeah.
Here's our
Yeah.
track record.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when I was working with Save the Brave, one of the things we could point to is that we show up, we do the work. Yeah, I know you've been cutting a check for the last 5 years with these guys. Do they even show up to the check awarding ceremony? Oh no, they haven't done that. Well, you know, we're going to be the guys that go out. We show up, we perform. You know, and that was how we were able to out compete established charities, by just saying, look at what we're doing right now. Look
Hmm.
how active we are, you know, and
Hmm.
that ability to do that. What's that funded by? It's funded by a lot of passion. It's funded by people pulling money out of their pockets and putting it in our pockets, so that we had the immediate lifeblood to keep things going. Because having a kick-ass newsletter, again, that takes time. Someone's got to tickle the ivories and
Right.
put out a newsletter, and that takes time and energy.
It does. One of the things that I do with Yorktown that may sound a little bit silly, but I think it's actually pretty important, is I do a lot of handwritten correspondence with our donors and partners. And that's not simply, you know, handwritten thank you notes, but that's handwritten update letters to partners and donors to say, hey, just wanted to give you a quick update on what Yorktown's doing. This is what we got going on, even above and beyond what you're reading in the newsletter. This is what's going on kind of behind the scenes. This is what we anticipate for the next quarter. And I, in this day and age of text messages and, Marco Polo and Instagram, email, all that stuff, for somebody to open a letter and go, wow, the guy at this organization actually sat down and wrote me a letter keeping me in the loop. I don't think a lot of people do that anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah. So that
And,
and that go ahead.
well, it's one way to set ourselves apart, because we are currently a small fish in a big pond, so we've got to figure out a way to get attention from the bigger fish, and that's one way that we go about doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do in my little organization is that we show up, we get in a plane, we're called the Ground Truth Center, and we have a meeting. We go to you. Sometimes you have to do Zoom. It's just we're not going to do it in spite of ourselves, but if at all possible, we hop on a plane, we sit face to face, and we say, "This is what we do," because this is part of what we do. That's the ground truth of things. We sit in front of Todd, we talk to Todd, and we have our meeting, and we try to figure these things out, right? And so that handwritten thing is part of what you do. That is how you drive things. And I don't want to bury the lead anymore. I mean, we've been talking about the mechanics of running a small foundation, but what is it that the Yorktown Foundation does?
We are a liberty-oriented think tank, public policy organization, and we focus on education policy in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So school issues are all the rage now. Parent rights and funding public schools and hybrid models, and this is in the news somewhat frequently. And our message at Yorktown is somewhat simple. I don't think I'm oversimplifying it by saying we want parents to be able to pick the best option for their children.
Right.
If the best option for their children is public school, let's make it the best public school it can be. If it's homeschooling, let's make sure all of the opportunities and resources are there for it to be the best homeschooling option it can be. If it's some sort of hybrid school, some sort of micro schooling or lab or pod or something like, let's do that. Let's make sure that parents are able to pick that option. It may be a private school. If they've got a compelling reason that there's a private school that's a great option, but maybe they don't have the resources for that, let's figure out a way to make that happen. Let's give the full menu to all parents so that they can pick the best option for their kids.
Yeah. We were having a conversation about homeschooling, and in this case, everybody here in this conversation, none of us have kids that are in K through 12 school anymore, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's easy to find yourself in a very jaunty conversation and lathered up about something that we frankly don't have any business in, other than being citizens, or have much knowledge of. So it's all assumptive as to what we think is good or bad. And I'm not, look, we all do these kinds of things where we put ourselves in this kind of a thing. But my imagination is that your organization would help inform someone, like, where should I be on these issues? What do the numbers say in this case of does homeschooling work, or
Mm-hmm.
does a hybrid model work? And look, the kid who's right at the top of the bell curve, who, whatever, he's just dopey kid 15, and everything's going to work out fine for him in the regular school model. Probably not talking about that kid. We're talking about the kids that are a little more towards the sides, where you're like, I don't know what to do with my kid. I need answers. That's probably the kid we're talking about. But is that what you guys do, is try to help us understand, where maybe the answers are? Does homeschooling work? Is there accountability problems? I don't know. I mean, you tell me.
One of our, as we continue building, because we're still a small organization, it's me, 2 directors, and a research fellow at this point. And I do have an absolutely astoundingly good communications professional helping me on contract with comms, but we're still pretty small. As we build out, that is part of the vision. So like one of the
Right.
projects that we have that we are building toward is just having a dashboard where a parent could go to Yorktown's website, and one of the options would be to go to the education dashboard. they would be able to put in their zip code, and they would be able to find out what all of the education options are for their family within a certain mile radius, as well as, pros and cons of those options, what it takes to avail a parent, avail themselves of an option, so on and so forth. So there is a strong education component about that, and we want to give parents tools, and we want to give them information so that they can make
Right.
the best decision. We believe that your average American is always going to make, um, probably always is a strong term, but over time, your average American citizen's typically going to make a really, really good decision if they've got information and opportunity.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And really, even if they don't make a good decision, it is their decision to make.
It is their decision to make,
Yeah.
that's the philosophical component of what we're doing. It's their decision to make.
Right.
Um, and so we want to afford them the opportunity to do that. Another aspect of the philosophical foundation of this is that, you know, we're just not big fans of monopolies.
Hmm.
And there are some folks in the school choice movement that are saying just do away with public school options. Just public schools had its course. We're ending it.
Yeah.
That's not where we are. If parents want public school, let's make sure that's a strong option for them. That being said, public school does function like a monopoly. You can homeschool, there are private schools, but public schools are the elephant in the room. I mean, they're the big 800-pound gorilla in the room. And when you have monopolies or something that's close to a monopoly, you have perverse incentive structures, and
Right.
you start getting bad results. And we see this right now with inner city schools. I mean, you can look at any inner city school district in America. It doesn't really even matter what the city is. Norfolk, Virginia, San Francisco, California, or good gravy, Oakland, California. Look at the test scores. Look at what those schools are turning out in terms of educational outcomes. It's a nightmare. Um, and part of that is because they don't have to compete. They don't have to compete for students. And the benefit of the student is really what we're focused on. We're not worried about whether an institution is doing great. We're worried about the kid.
Yeah. Yeah. There is some cross purposing in some of these cases where the institution has to survive, and it's like, oh yeah, and the output are these students, right? But you
Right,
have
right.
several things that are competing for resources, and you're right about that. And if in this case the thing they need is some competition, okay. But yeah, it is interesting when you look at the big picture and how these things come out. When you look at the small picture, sometimes things get different real fast. And again, so a friend of mine is an assistant superintendent for a very large school district out here. And what this person, she's been on the show, so I can identify a little bit of who she is. But she would say, if you have a problem with the school district, well, there's a lot of things that parents need to do better themselves. And that's one is make sure your kid's prepared and ready to go to school each day. That seems simple. She's like, you'd be amazed at how many kids come and they are not ready. You have, as a parent, you have not done your job. You sent us a kid that is not awake, not fed, and not prepared to start doing their job for the day. And so now we have to stop a lot of what we're doing and tend to your kids' inability to do their job. And that seems like the basic thing, right? So a lot of parents have to really focus on that. And then the other thing she said, and this is very reasonable, is if you have a problem with what you're being told is going on in the classroom, you have every opportunity to go and speak to that teacher at the lowest level and try to sort out, is who is telling the truth, the kid, the teacher, and what is that situation, and then you can graduate up. And the school wants to be involved, and these are the best case scenarios where you can handle these things at the lowest level. She goes through several things where a parent who's involved and engaged has a lot of opportunity. And this is in hippie California, has a lot of opportunity to get in front of most of the problems. So there are solutions, but it does require parents to be involved with that. I don't want to get us too far from what you guys are doing, but parents still got to be parents, damn it, and we have to be ready to do that. If you're too busy and you're too hands off and you want to rely on the school, well, the school's capacity to be a parent all of a sudden, is taking away from their ability to educate as a lowest common denominator. Now they're doing a lot more things than what they're designed to do.
Well, yeah, on one level, that's indubitably true. You can't say, hey, we're pushing for parents' rights, and then simultaneously say my kid's going to show up unprepared, whatever.
Right.
And I don't think that's what people are saying. I was raised by a single mom.
Yeah.
I have a lot of sympathy for those parents who are working two jobs, and they are maxing out their bandwidth just to get the kid to school in the morning. Right. They're paying the power bill, and they're paying some modicum of groceries, and that's it. That's their bandwidth.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of sympathy for parents who are in that predicament, and they may find that their kid, instead of being in a class of 30 students in a grade that has 400 students in that grade, maybe their kid would benefit from a small hybrid school that only has 20 kids in the whole school, and they get that really targeted, individualized attention. Let's make that happen.
Right.
As far, being able to plead your case through the system, I think that was probably the norm for a really long time. I mean, when you and I were young, there was even what was the name of that movie, Pete, about the PTA, where the mom gets all incensed and goes down to the PTA and kind of shows her rear end, and what, Harper Valley PTA? Or
Harper Valley PTA, yes.
You remember that? And
and a great song.
Yeah, that's right. And now you're going to have it stuck in your head all day long. You're welcome.
I hope so. That's a good song.
And I think for several decades, it was sort of presumed that if you were an engaged parent, you could go to a parent-teacher conference, or you could go to the school administrator, or you could go to a school board meeting if you wanted to, and plead your case and find some sort of resolution. Look, maybe little Johnny wasn't telling you the whole story. And once you go talk to some of the teachers and administrators, you find out a little bit more of what that narrative looks like, or maybe there really is a problem to resolve. But for a long time, there was that presumption that you had that outlet. Recently, in a number of cases, I'm particularly thinking of Loudoun County, Virginia, and Montgomery County, Maryland, you've had parents, not all of whom, but a lot of whom were Indian immigrants from the Indian subcontinent, who were very dissatisfied with their kids' education in a public setting, and went and petitioned the school board and were told, quite frankly, sit down and shut up. And so they're not getting any resolution out of that process. And that's another piece of the puzzle that we want to pay some attention to at Yorktown.
Yeah, Thomas Sowell has written about this quite at length, with charter schools and the political fight, right? And again, this has nothing to do with kids. This has everything to do with money and the flow of it and the resistance to competition. And you're right. This is where the parents' right issue does come in. By the way, this is a multifaceted, multivariate problem that we're talking about. It's one thing. It's one thing to have your kid, and I'm just going to paint a picture. You know that you can paint the opposite picture where there's an opposite outcome. But if your kid shows up slovenly, hungry, and sleepy, so in California, we're desperate to try to solve the problem that is unsolvable because kids just are going to be kids. But our kids show up at 9 a.m. so that way they're bright and bushy tailed when they come to school.
Of
Guess
course
what?
they are.
They
Of
just
course
stay
they
up
are.
later.
Right. Right. That just
I know. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna show up at 10 o'clock.
yeah. At which point they'll Snapchat and TikTok until 5 a.m. instead.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Like,
know?
I'm so tired. They show up, Um, and listen, I can say some of this because I stand in front of high schoolers, seniors, 2 times a year every year, and I watch them come in. And they pull themselves together by about third period, and they're ready to rock, and they can become more engaged and stuff. But kids are kids. They're just going to be dopey half of the day, and then they're going to get hungry, and then they're going to be ready to go, and they're going to do what they're going to do. But we're talking about the parents' rights to do things. One of the things I'm curious what your thoughts are, and I want to talk from the point of view of the foundation, because again, here in California, our governor, who's not running for president, will talk about other states and their policies. About he'll say they're banning books, which may or may
Mm,
not be true, and
mm.
then I'll hear the other end of it, like, well, we're getting rid of pornographic books, and so they have these two realities, and it's so hard as a parent to, like, how much time do I have to spend trying to understand these books that are in the library? Because people submit that you can say, hey, this is a sex education book, and it might make you uncomfortable as a parent. And part of your job is to deal with that, because we do have to do a better job at sex education. Because I know that when I was a kid, they gave us sex education, but I didn't know how to deal with my drive.
Mm.
I understood the mechanics, but this thing down here is the boss. It's like telling me to do things, and I don't know how to handle it. So that we do need to do a better job. But I also read Huck Finn in school, and we read
Yeah.
it out loud.
Yeah.
And we also read the earlier part of the book that no one ever talks about, where the author says, "Here's why I wrote this book. Here is the language of the time," and Mark Twain explains that stuff. So that's a book that gets banned as well. So let's talk a little bit about the narratives, the political narratives that have nothing to do with the education, that go into how we. I'm gonna say one more thing about this too, because again, this is complex. My buddy Mike has a trans kid, and that's changed his entire world. Where he's in Dallas, and he finds himself in this thing where there were a group of trans parents that were out in front of a school library event where they were going to have a bunch of parents of trans kids, pre-trans kids, that were trying to understand what their kids are going through. And they're all trying, there's a learning event that they paid to go to. So yes, it's on school grounds, but this is a private paid event. And all of a sudden, the Proud Boys show up, and then Antifa shows up. And my buddy Mike is like, I don't know why everybody's so upset. This is nothing. No one's being forced to be here. These parents have chosen to be here. There's medical people here, and we're all trying to just help these parents keep their kid alive and get them through this very dangerous process, because they're just are. This is all about love and caring for and just trying to be better, right? But the story exits outside of this little community and becomes something totally different. So these are parents that are trying to do the right thing. I'm not saying anybody's right, anybody's wrong. What I'm saying is, all of a sudden, it's no longer about kids that are struggling with who and what they are. So we have all of these external factors that are confusing and exacerbating and making dangerous a situation that has nothing to do with them. So we have this pornographic book banning thing. We have all of these different issues that go into this soup of stuff, and it really gets really far from where a parent is trying to marshal their kid through an education.
So you could have just as easily said, Hester, I want you to solve the theological, philosophical,
Yeah,
educational, economic,
yeah,
political problems of our country in 50 words or less.
that's right. Yeah,
Right.
take
There's
that
a
Yorktown Foundation and
yeah,
run
right.
it through its gears. That's
What
it.
are you doing? Come on, fix this already.
Yeah,
Um, I think. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to share with you an anecdote that may illustrate my thinking. on this issue. I was doing a media spot with a guy named Andrew Wilkow. I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Wilkow. He is a conservative talk show guy. He's got a radio show during the day, and then he does a television show in the evening. And I was on a television show a few weeks ago, and we were talking about school choice. And I said, well, Yorktown Foundation for Public Policy is a liberty-oriented organization. We believe in liberty. We believe in giving you opportunity and choices.
Right.
Not everybody is going to pick the choice that I want them to pick.
That's right.
Okay. So if I create, or if I'm heavily involved in creating a situation in the Commonwealth of Virginia where parents get to pick whatever option on the menu they want, and they pick the option that says, we and 6 other parental couples are going to start our own school that pushes secular humanism, and we're going to teach our kids to be atheists, and that's going to be their K through 12 experience. I'm an evangelical Christian, and I'm pretty serious about being an evangelical Christian. I don't want kids raised up to be atheists. But if you're going to say we want liberty, then that's what you have to, that's part of what you're signing up for, okay? If they're beating the kids, well, that's a different matter, right? That's something, we're not talking about that. We're talking about philosophy. And so part of, I think, a fundamental fulcrum issue of what you're discussing is twofold. One, we were pretty smart back in the day when we actually treated education as a local issue, local school boards, a local school superintendent, and let the people in that municipality decide how they want to handle these issues. Why is Antifa getting involved in this? Why are the Proud Boys showing up? This is a local issue. You don't get to show up and tell us what to do. This is our little bailiwick, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think, I'm a localist, just generally speaking. I think every issue should be devolved down to the most local aspect possible. Some can't be, okay? The national defense of our country cannot be run by my local dog catcher, right? That has to be a federal issue by definition. But in so much as you can, you ought to devolve everything down to the most local level of governance that you can. And education, you can do that. So part of the answer to your question is keep education local and let people figure it out for themselves. The second is a corollary to the first, which is if you actually believe in liberty, if you actually push liberty as a deeply woven part of our social fabric, there are other people that are going to do things you don't like. And as long as they are not breaking the law and hurting someone else, they get to do that. And that's a significant part of what it means to live in a republic of 325 million people.
Yeah. It's tolerance is just not just that you get to do your own thing. It also means that your neighbor gets to do their own thing too, right? Yeah.
Well, there's two parts, right? Live and let live. Well, you have to do both of them, right?
Yeah, you gotta let both do it. We had a guy on our show the other day, Will Riley, and I had a guy named Rio, and he and
Will
a
the
couple
Beast.
other couple. Yeah, and we had a guy named Rio on the show, and he and his wife in a polyamorous multi-couple relationship raised kids together, and they homeschool those kids. That does not sit well with a lot of people. But there they are, and they raise their own food, and they are very independent, and in some ways they are very conservative. But their form of family is very modern and very open, and it makes people uncomfortable. But they're responsible parents; they're living within the law, and so you have to say, okay, I don't have to like it, but if they're raising responsible kids, they're learning all the required things. All right. And if they're using the Yorktown Foundation to navigate, the educational requirements of their homeschooling, perfect. In this case, they're in California, but whatever. If they were using the California version of the Yorktown Foundation, Hey, and I don't even think they live far enough north to be in the state of Jefferson. I
Free
think that
state
they're
of
just in Northern
Jefferson.
California. Yeah, they might be that far up north, but I think that they're just south of that line. Either way, hey, you know what? That's part of what the freedom thing is, and you can build your own little. Uh, you know, I don't want to say anything derogatory about it because that's shitty of me to do that. They have found a way to get along an open community with kids and love. That's what they do.
Well, part of, a corollary to that is a big part of liberty. In fact, a necessary part of liberty is being able to debate these issues and sometimes pretty vocally, pretty vigorously. You know, I think I can
Yeah.
make I think I can make a pretty good data driven argument that a polyamorous community is going to over the long term be bad for child raising. I think I can make that argument. Liberty says I get to make that argument. I get to make that argument in the public square. Liberty also says that your polyamorous family, on the outskirts of the free state of Jefferson, get to push back and say, here's why we think that this is good or this is okay
Yeah.
or whatever. You have to have those arguments. You have to have the space for those arguments, and the only way to do that is through both a concept and a practice of freedom. One of
Right.
the things that causes me some concern is that I see a shrinking amount of vigorous debate going on because, if Pete says, well, I know of a polyamorous community and they're raising kids, I go, groomer. And, if I say I'm an evangelical Christian and there are some books that I think shouldn't be in the elementary school, you say fascist, book burner,
Yes.
and so the
Yeah.
conversations get closed down at the
Yep.
outset instead of us getting around a table and pouring a decent whiskey and saying, why do you think this is okay? Like, I think this is absolutely insane. Why do you think this? And having those conversations. One
Yeah.
of the things that
Yeah.
I love
When
about
you
one of the things that I love about
go
the
ahead.
type of school choice that Yorktown is pushing is that it gets people who might not ordinarily intersect together in an educational environment. So one of the things that we're seeing now is some decent research coming out that says when you take schooling and you segregate it by artificial lines that we call zip codes, one of the things that you're doing is you're keeping kids in one zip code apart from kids in a different zip code. And it may be of some benefit to get those kids from different zip codes in front of each other, learning together, talking to each other, cross pollinating their ideas and their experiences in a way that we used to do but don't do anymore.
Yeah. There's also because we amassed so much knowledge now and access to so much incredible knowledge. My buddy Dave runs a nature conservancy. And
Mm-hmm.
you go on a nature walk with him and you're just mouth agape the entire time when he's talking about the flora and the fauna. And you could, as a parent, he could say, hey, I'm going to do 5 groups of 20 kids, and each kid brings $25, and I'm just going to run them around for, and again, not a long time, right? Long enough to keep their attention, 45 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
swat them on the butt, give them a sticker, and off they go. And then you can come back as often as you want, 3 times a year. He's got a good little business. He could teach 3 or 4 people. And there's no way those kids wouldn't learn more in that 45 minutes or have access to more knowledge than you could ever teach them in a book, right? Not just homeschool, but every kid could have access to wonderful knowledge, be in nature, get out of their damn classrooms, get off their damned phones. And that's that. Then you do that with music, and you do that with auto shop, and you could have all of these small businesses that all of a sudden have a lot of revenue coming through for money that, if the parent didn't have access to it, could be provided through grants or could be provided through whatever. And that kind of a machine is buildable now because we do have the technology to take disparate things and funnel them into a machine that goes money, 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 money to all these areas. And you can find aptitude for kids and then allow themselves to guide their own education once they get old enough to do that and turn themselves into a naturalist or whatever it is. There are amazing things just in front of us. I mean, Elon Musk just showed us his magic robot. That thing is amazing. So there's all this stuff that's right in front of us that is it's going to change and really in a lot of ways further diminish the lecture method that we're so fond of and put us in a completely different sphere because you know here in California, because we have a crazy geography here, you can be in the ocean and on top of a mountain in 3 hours, 3 hours. And just learning all of that natural world is a mind-bending experience for any young kid. Let's tap into that resource. And it sounds like your organization will be on the cutting edge of providing access to parents who want to do these kinds of things. And then now let the districts compete with that.
Yeah, I last year I toured a hybrid learning model called a co-learning space in Decatur, Georgia, suburb of Atlanta. And a big part, it's not the only reason, but a big reason that this co-learning space exists is because Georgia is one of those states, not to get into this debate, but it's one of the spaces where they sent their kids back to school a little bit earlier than everybody else did. Kids didn't have to wear a mask. And so you had parents who were on the left side of the aisle who said, whoa, 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 this kind of freaks us out. And so they created this small local co-learning space for those kids that they could abide by their own COVID precautions the way they thought was safe and prudent to do so. And what the co-learning space is it is an a la carte membership. And the guy that runs it told me, he said, look, I've got parents that this is the only education that their kids are exposed to. And then I've got parents who basically just drop their kids off for glorified babysitting and everything in between. And they have, there's a term for them, I forget the name for it, but they're basically teachers or educational consultants that are around if a kid needs a little bit of help with math or a little bit of help with science, whatever. But for the most part, it is self-directed learning. You do have to meet some basic benchmarks, but for the most part, it's self-directed learning. And while I was touring this co-learning space, there was a young African-American girl. She was probably 5th grade, 6th grade, and she was in their recording studio. They have a recording suite with all of this sound equipment and several musical instruments. And she was not only teaching herself how to play a couple of the musical instruments, but she was also laying down tracks and then layering the tracks, including vocals, to write and record her own song. And this young girl was in her element. She was having the time of her life. I mean, you could tell that she was enjoying it, but she also kind of had this furrowed brow that she was dialed in. I mean, this was pretty serious work. And it was so fascinating and enjoyable to see this kid's passions just be able to grow and flourish, and for her to do her thing that she felt like she was connecting with. And I thought all going through school that I was really, really bad at science. It turns out I love science and I'm not half bad at it. I just hated sitting there and doing the worksheets while the teacher did the transparency projector in front of the room, And like you say, maybe if I've got 2 friends here in the Roanoke Valley that run an outdoor school and they do the exact type of thing that your buddy does for a little bit of a fee, they will take 8-year-old kids out for a week and go hiking and camping with them and teach them all about the botany, teach them all about the biology of the ecosystem, so on and so forth. Why not do that? Let's do more of it. Let's make that possible for every kid.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just saying a nature walk in this case, right? And that's not his business. He runs the whole conservancy, and anybody can walk through at any time. But yeah, you could turn that into a micro business, and
Sure.
really and open up people's minds to it. There's another model. My buddy Tony works at the JFK Middle College High School. That's a lot of words, but it is an open campus. It is not a prison, and so you can walk on and off the campus, and it's co-located with a community college. And so
Hmm.
once you get to the high school, you can walk across the parking lot and take community college classes, even as a freshman. And
Hmm.
so you've got this collegial atmosphere. So, like when we were walking during his prep period, he saw three kids in the hallway and he's like, "Hey, what are you three up to?" And they're like, "Oh, we're between classes. We're going to go head over to the college and take whatever class they were going to take." And he wasn't doing that to check up on them. He was kind of showing me how their process works
Sure.
and also
Sure.
just engaging with these kids more as adults as opposed to schoolmaster, like, where are you? Where are you going? And it was a really cool way to see, if you wanted to take something harder and you had the capacity to do it, you could go do that. And it's a really like a lot of times in high school, you're taking classes because you're around your friends and everything. But there are
Right.
a lot of times where the class I was taking was frankly just boring and it was just too easy. And I'd
Hmm.
already read a book about it, and I'm like, I know a lot of this stuff. Like I wasn't the smartest kid in the world, but I definitely would have been like, I can go to college right now. I'll go take that. And I didn't want to take AP. That wasn't even a thing when I was a kid. But there were classes that I would have taken. And I definitely like I can go to college. I would have done that. I would have done that. And it's so neat that we have this ability to start to I don't want to send 12-year-olds to Cal Berkeley. I think that's insane. But to allow them to start to taste that atmosphere, and instead of clamping down and turning schools into prisons and locking kids into a box and creating anxiety that they're about to get attacked, we should be Pete says we should be expanding their minds and opening them up and diversifying their experience as opposed to cloistering them and turning them into a target. I just don't understand that philosophy.
Yeah, a different school that I toured earlier this year, also in Atlanta. You know, a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies that you watch, if you watch all the way through the end credits, you'll see a peach pop up and it says, this was filmed in
Yep.
Georgia.
Yeah. I've
Well,
met that guy, by the way. I met the guy that's his job.
oh, to put that on there?
He's the guy that gets films to come out and film in Georgia. That's his job is to get that peach on films. He's like, come to Georgia and film here. Yeah, that's his thing.
Well, then he probably knows this school because I toured a school. It's called a micro school, which is think of a one-room schoolhouse, bunch of different kids, different ages, all in one room together. A lot of self-direction, but it is on the campus where a lot of that production is done. Film studios. That guy's office is probably there because it's the epicenter of all the film production in Georgia. So you
Bravo.
have you have elementary and middle school kids. I mean, that's not what they're called in this school because it's a little bit more organic than that. But you have young kids that have access to going and watching a TV show filmed or produced or edited or
Right.
whatever the step of the process they want, and they're right there on the campus. Like you said, they can walk across the parking lot and see what ends up on the chopping floor of a
Yeah.
certain movie. And so these kids are getting a much broader, they're not simply getting a broader education than you and I did when we were younger. They're getting a broader idea of what learning is than you and I
Mm,
got when we were younger,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You and I were raised thinking that education is what you memorize and regurgitate.
Yeah.
These kids they're given the experience that education is letting your curiosity run wild. And I love that. And I
Yeah.
want every kid to be
Yeah.
able to tap into that.
Yeah. And with the resources that we all have now at our fingertips, this thing right here, you know, if I want to learn how to guess what, Todd, if I want to learn how to start a foundation in the state of Virginia,
Follow
there's a
me.
guy who's like, here are the 5 steps. And you're like, 5 steps. Oh, come on.
Yeah, I'm on step 39 of that 5-step process.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, we've had this great conversation and I've asked you so many questions and I'm just trying to highlight the work and the vision and everything. But I want to give you a chance to say the things that you need to say about the foundation so that we can do service to what you're doing. Because I think first off, I think it's incredible when people do civic things civilly so that we can all benefit from it. But what do you need to say about the Yorktown Foundation?
Well, thanks for that opportunity. The policy aspect of it is obviously hugely important to us. But there's an aspect that we haven't talked about that's equally important to us, and that is the tone and mindset of statesmanship. Not only do we want to embark on this very important work, but we want to do it with a sense of civility and statesmanship. Um, we already have lots of politicians all over the place who are acting like they're 4-year-olds that didn't get their pudding cup. And we need less of that, and we need more of that civil discourse and disagreement of saying, hey, what's best for our kids? Okay. We want to
Yeah.
fund teachers. We want great classrooms. But at the end of the day, this is fundamentally about our children. What's best for children? And have those discourses, but have them in a way that raises the level of civil conversation in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's pretty important to us.
Yeah. Be good examples for these kids that we're trying to raise better and better and better, right? And the ability to have a conversation where we don't agree, right? And we can sit there and say, I don't agree with that. And you get to say, you don't have to. And the other person's like, you're right. I'm going to do what I want to do. And you're like, you get to.
There's a
It's
lot of education that happens by teaching. There's also a lot of
yeah.
education that happens by modeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
That
pretty
is so
important to
true.
us. We want to try to set a tone. In fact, later this afternoon, I'm going to talk with a local media outlet about possibly partnering on some events where we can talk about building a civil society in Virginia and getting the rancor. You're never going to get the rancor completely out of the public square, but at least let's try to mitigate it and reduce it.
Yeah. 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 That's for sure. All right. Anything in closing before I wrap this thing up?
www.yorktownpolicy.org, as Pete has put up there. We would love for you to check us out and see what we're doing. That's perfect. I very much appreciate, Pete, you taking an hour of your busy schedule to chat with us about what we're doing, and we'll keep you posted on how it looks in the future.
Okay, stand by. I'll be right back to you.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.